We didn't grow up knowing what executive function skills were. Life felt overwhelming. Managing time, staying organized, and feeling stuck made everything difficult. What we didn't realize was that we lacked the skills to plan, prioritize, and break goals into manageable steps. After years of trial and error, we've seen how powerful executive function skills can be. With expert interviews, real stories, and practical strategies, this podcast is the resource we wish we had. Whether you're a student, parent, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential. Welcome to the Executive Function for All podcast. Today we're joined by Laura Barr. Laura is a former teacher turned college consultant who has worked with hundreds of students who think differently. In this episode, Laura shares how parents can hand over executive function responsibilities before college begins, how neurodivergent students can manage the overwhelm of the college application process, and what families should be looking for in a college throughout the process. Laura's perspective on using the college process to build executive function skills is practical, empowering, and one I think every family with college-bound students should listen to. Let's begin. Laura, I'm so excited to have you on today.
It's an honor to be here, as always.
I have been following your practice for a while, even since before we knew each other, and I'm just amazed at the work you do and the mindsets that you have around helping students get to college. And the biggest piece of that is you don't just use college admissions as a way to get students into college. Obviously, it comes from that, but you use it to help build executive function skills. And I think you and I agree that it is one of the biggest tasks we can give our young adults to help build these skills. So I want to dive into that today.
I'm ready to do that.
Awesome. So for parents who have been basically their teens frontal lobe throughout middle school and high school, how do you recommend those families start handing over tasks, not only for the college admissions process, but just in life to prepare for independence?
Well, first, I'd like to compliment parents in general, because working with students, having children who have ADHD and have executive function challenge is a big endeavor. I myself have parented kids who are neurodiverse, and one of the things that I know is that it is constantly tempting to do it for them as opposed to have them do it themselves. It is a lot, and there is so much expected. And I think when I think about how I want parents to begin transitioning from doing it to having them do it, I think about parents releasing some of the things that are happening in the family home. That if we can, from 3 years old on, give students the opportunities to do the daily chores of unloading the dishwasher, making beds, waking up on time, that kind of transition is the beginning of practice. Now, because we also just said that sometimes it's so much easier to do it themselves, and we have 9th and 10th graders who still aren't doing those things, my biggest advice is to start there. Start where your kids are able to start just doing, act like you're raising your kids on a family farm. That's my biggest advice. Because I could sit here and I could go through all of the task initiation and all of the, backwards planning and calendar blocking. But really, executive function skills are really just about being human. And in so many ways, we have taken those opportunities away from students because we have overbooked them, overscheduled them, and society's demanding that. So it's not a personal attack on parents. I get it. I'm in it, right? But I think that if we can give kids back that kind of feeling of owning the chores and the responsibilities of the family home, then they build self-efficacy in that. And so this is probably not the answer you were expecting, right? You were probably expecting some big answer about college readiness and all of that. But first, I just want kids to feel like they're part of their home and that they reap the benefits of what it feels like to be engaged in those family systems. Then we can talk about the rest.
Yeah, it's such a great insight. And I love how you started there, because in working with college students, like 9 times out of 10, what stresses them out is exactly what you're talking about. Like, they don't know how to do their laundry. I remember I was talking with a kid on the phone once and the smoke detector started going off. I was like, what just happened? He's like, I can't figure out why this hamburger meat stays cold on the outside, or excuse me, cold on the inside, and it's like burning on the outside. I was like, is the hamburger meat frozen? And he's like, yeah, I've been cooking it for on the stove on high for an hour. And it's just there's so many of these stories that we have where what actually gives them a lot of anxiety during the transition is the basics, like what you're talking about.
Think about what you learn about a human brain on how they unload a dishwasher, right? And so when I think about how we created our college application process for our students, is I think about it as unloading a dishwasher. Like, what do we need to do first? What do we need to do second? What do we need to do third? And to scaffold that process from the beginning to the end, we call that backwards planning, reverse engineering a project, and thinking about where do we need to start today to get to that point where we are submitting applications. And that's really our mission, is we provide one-to-one mentorship from the beginning to the end, and we scaffold the project in a way that makes it palpable for actually any student.
Is that hard for a lot of families to wrap their head around? Because I'm sure you get the call where we want to get into a certain university, right? And you're like, okay, here's my process. And they kind of get taken back by that.
I think what most parents get taken aback by is that the process has gotten absolutely out of hand as far as what is required for any student to apply to school. There are so many factors. And so first, I think it's parents coming to terms with that's the fact, whether you have a child who's neurodiverse or not, that the project is intense. And I think it's really hard for me to imagine a parent managing this process without some kind of support. And that is not because I'm trying to sell my practice or anybody else's. Listen, college school counselors are great resources, but I really feel like I just want to sing out to the planet how important it is for students to carefully attack this project in a way that empowers them instead of diminishes them.
Yeah, so what are some of the processes that have changed in the college application process since me, you, and other parents went through it?
Well, number one, there is one very important application called the Common Application that the stakes are higher on how that is completed because there's only one application. Well, there are some exceptions to that. UC schools, but just follow me here, right? That there's one application and they're all being screened in the same way, right? And so the idea of mistakes on an application, of flexibility in how you write your essays. And the bottom line is, back when I was in college, I wrote one essay. I typed it on a typewriter, put it in an envelope, and sent it. For some students applying to maybe 10 to 15 colleges, they're going to have 12 to 55 essays.
55?
55 if you're applying to highly, highly selective schools and Ivies. 55 essays.
Wow.
So if we do not backwards plan that from beginning of junior year, writing what we say academic interest statements, why us statements. So, to get back to your question, what has changed is that there's one application that matters more. So that kind of getting it right matters. Number two is the amount of essays. And then there's all these other factors. For instance, we have early decision, regular decision, early action, which means many students need to be application ready by the beginning of their senior year, which means starting freshman year matters. When we're talking frontal lobes we're talking baby frontal lobes, right? And if you have a student who has ADHD, they're probably going to have, their frontal lobes probably need more support and scaffolding. So those decisions and the classes that we take matter starting freshman year. So it's really starting earlier is so important. And that's just the beginning. There's demonstrated interest. There's a whole list of things that will bore you.
Yeah. It's gotten so complex. What you spoke to it, you passed over it a few times, but what type of systems does every student, but specifically students with ADHD or executive function challenges, what kind of systems do they need to have throughout this process?
I think one of the things that I always say is that when we have students working with us is we're not exactly looking for a motivated student, right? Who's going to be motivated when the project is 3 years out? It's really hard. I think that the system of having a structure is absolutely crucial. To have some kind of project plan that begins in freshman, sophomore year so that there is a roadmap. So that is the first thing. I think the other structure that I care about the most is making sure that that roadmap is visible and that each step along the way has very manageable tasks that are doled out in tiny little pieces. I always say tiny steps over time are giant steps that get the job done, right? And if we can scaffold those little tasks so that students feel like they can handle them, it makes this cloud of anxiety completely dissipate. The other thing that you actually were talking about this before in your own practice is I think this process demands body doubling, and to really have a mentor to sit with students to understand what the process is, not to do the heavy lifting for the student, but for the student to have a mentor who is right by their side, who's guiding them to empower them on information they would not know otherwise, which kind of comes back to this idea. It's so hard for me to imagine a student going through this process without some kind of mentorship.
Yeah, it's so complicated. And with a parent, it's so emotional, right? like when you look at an essay as a parent, I know I'm looking at that in a very different way than if it's not my child. I can give much more clear, calm feedback.
I mean, the emotional piece, it's even beyond that. It's emotional because this is the biggest project of a parent and child's life together so far.
When you were explaining the process that you guys go through with the backwards planning and reverse engineering, like in my head, it was like, yes, check. It's like all the best practice executive function work we can do. It's planning, it's prioritizing, it's breaking large tasks into small pieces so we don't ramp up anxiety. What do you do about procrastination, which is the one I always hear, or students who just won't get started on this process?
Well, I've always said this. I've said this for 30 years as I've been practicing, is that all behavior comes from need. And procrastination is not laziness. It's not them trying to torture us, students trying to torture us. It is the real indication that there is a need. And I think that's where we come in, right? Like mentors coming in to say, let me help you get that started. Maybe a student doesn't know how to do it. Maybe they put it off. In our practice, we are fully believers that if we can do it with them and get them started, then they can finish that project and feel like they did it.
Yeah, I love that. All behavior is need. I mean, and that's why I love this process as well for so many of our students is it's basically like a mini college, right? It's you go through all these, it's big, it's overwhelming, it feels large. And that's how college feels for a lot of our students during this transition. And so I love that all behavior is need. And if they are procrastinating, it's the education, right? It's what the coach, the mentor, whoever can do to help them because they're just going to encounter that again.
Well, I mean, you're speaking to exactly what we promote is that by going through this process, we are preparing them for college, right? And that the college application process is an opportunity to practice executive functioning in one of the biggest projects of their life so far so that they can then take it to college and use those same skills. A lot of times people will say, well, gosh, are you really letting the students do the heavy lifting? And the answer is yes, but maybe at the beginning, we're going to be right by their side, right next to them body doubling. But by the time they are seniors, because they worked with us for 3 years, they're finally getting the hang of what is it like to write a why us essay? I'm going to add this college to my list. I'm going to reach out to my support services at my high school or even my future college to start really getting a handle of what I need. So it's like building this self-efficacy. Actually, in our practice, we call it early expedition, middle expedition, and late expedition. And I built this around the expeditionary learning model of like what the education expeditionary learning does to get someone out in the wilderness, right? You start with, your mentor right there. Then soon you're learning, okay, I can do this and I can do it with a group of people. And then in expeditionary learning, they have that solo expedition, right? Where you're out there on your own. And that is part of our process is guiding them to that point where they do have that independence. So you're right, it is kind of like preparing them in a way for a college.
That's super cool. And you keep coming to it over and over, teaching your students how to advocate. Like that's the one thing I've heard. They know how to approach an admissions officer, a professor, and they know how to be, a future employer. They just know how to advocate, which is awesome.
Well, and remember, the way we do that is we sit with them. We're like, open up that document. We're going to write that letter to that regional rep. Let's go ahead. You're going to have an interview. Let's go ahead right now. Tell me about yourself, right? Like they are practicing it with us all along the way in these kind of in slow doses of practice so that it's not this overwhelming project at the last minute to, oh my God, get 10 applications out at the last minute.
And that's a really good point that I did brush over because often parents are like, okay, you need to get started. A lot of us are like that, right? And so it's a lot of scaffolding up front and then easing off. I mean, is there a more overwhelming statement for a 15, 16-year-old than tell me about yourself.
Right. Or anyone. I have a son who's interviewing right now in California. And it's like, that's the most dreaded question is tell me about yourself.
Yeah, I don't even know how I would answer that right now. To be honest, there's been a lot of things along the way. Like just approaching these really broad questions starts with a lot of structure.
Yep.
I'm sure you get the call of parents who are juniors. So you just laid out the best case scenario. Start as freshmen, build skills, and then ease off. What do you tell parents who are juniors who may be listening to this and maybe like feeling a lot of anxiety themselves?
Yeah, it's funny because parents of juniors will call and say, I think we might be a little late in the process. And inside, I want to comfort them because I want to say, well, listen, the best time, there's always a time to start the project. There's a lot of things that are missed if we don't start earlier. But with the junior, we just start with where they are. And with where they are is back to that whole idea of who am I, right? And I think if we can comfort parents any stage along the way, that cycling through the conversation of academic awareness, career awareness, college awareness, and personal awareness, cycling through those conversations while we are getting the job of the college application done is really our approach. So there is some triage when students come late to us and we're not able to do that kind of deeper work. But with that said, we're still doing the work while we get the application done.
What do you say to parents who are really locked in on a certain school, like an alma mater, an Ivy League, the brand name?
Yeah.
Maybe they have a student that thinks differently, right?
I just did a whole thing on Dream School yesterday.
Yeah.
And so it's really fresh in my mind is in our practice, I am very clear with parents and students from the beginning that Dream School does not exist anymore. I don't even like to use that language, and we really move away from it. And we also really move away from one school that's a favorite, and we're really trying to guide families on not getting stuck on highly selective schools these days. I mean, if you just look at the news, these highly selective schools at 2 to 3, 8% schools that 4 years ago were 20% acceptance rates are now 10 or 8%. So it's unhealthy for either a parent or a student to go in thinking that that is going to be a possibility for them. And I know it sounds silly. It's not that I don't want it to be a possibility, but I want them to have 5 schools on their list that they would be delighted to go to that are also in the target and likely category. And if we have parents who, in our practice, if we have parents who are so set on only Ivy and only highly selective, then they're probably not a fit for our practice. And that's okay. I can refer them to great people who will help them in that.
What do you look for? A student has an ADHD or another executive function challenges. That gives parents a lot of anxiety to know that their student will be taken care of, coming from highly structured high school home environment. I know this is a broad question, but what do you look for in a college for a student with ADHD and an executive function challenge to make sure that they're going to be taken care of during this transition?
I think it's a really important question, and it's nuanced because the first thing that I want to know is how does that individual student manage their own diagnosis, how they own it, or if they do or don't. I want to know if the student is an advocate for themselves. One of the biggest mistakes I see today is students who have a diagnosis and they want to go to college and they say to me, I want a fresh start.
All the time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's like ADHD doesn't go away when you're going to college. And if anything, the game gets so much harder to play that we see a lot of kids tank if they do not take that ownership of their diagnosis and they don't early on figure out what that college, we can go back to those 5 colleges on their list, what those colleges offer, right? And so it's our responsibility in our practice to make sure students do know that those are the things that are going to be important in their college search from the beginning. Okay, so let's go back to the question that you asked is how do we know that colleges, it's an ownership between the college and the student. When students go to college, there are no more parents allowed in the advocacy, 0. And IEPs and 504s do not follow students. Most colleges are looking for a neuropsych that has been updated within 3 years of them starting. So we always encourage our students to get that assessment done the summer before their senior year. And the reason I do that, I want that is because I want students to be highly involved in the debrief of their neuropsych. For some of them, that is the first time they've ever done that. Many students just walk around knowing, I have ADHD, but they don't know what that means. Working memory, processing speed, their visual spatials, like all of those things, like what does that mean about how my brain works? And the more that they understand that, the more they can advocate. Many students have not even read what accommodations their psychologists have recommended. So it's really important process. I think that if students do not take that ownership, then they're going to see a problem when they get on campus. And we really try to avoid that.
First of all, I love your example of the neuropsych. And the reason why is because I know a lot of parents we've seen, they get this neuropsych report back and it's scary for them to show their kids and to be a part of the process. It's like, look, their working memory's low. Well, yes, we can take that as a character issue. It's not. You could take it as that. But that's a really helpful thing for that child to know and for us to know too. It's like, it's not good or bad. It just means we need to start studying. Instead of studying for a test 3 days in advance, maybe it's just 5 days in advance. Maybe we just need more structure on those study sessions because we know working memory is a challenge. Like that information, that metacognition, that self-understanding is so helpful.
If students know what they need and then they go onto campus and they can self-advocate, then they know what they're looking for when they're trying to navigate all of the services that are offered to students. There are so many colleges that are very aware that all students are suffering from lack of executive function. And so many of these colleges have put incredible pieces in place to be able to support these students, but most of our students are not even asking or looking for them. But sometimes it's because they don't know what they're asking because they don't know themselves well enough, right?
Yeah.
To know what they're asking for. It's that whole thing, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, I've never put that together, those two things with like the neuropsych, and because we always talk about how to advocate. We talk about role playing. We talk about draft emails. We talk about all that stuff. But that is a huge part of advocating, is that deep understanding of yourself.
Yeah.
That I think we brush over a lot. Is there anything else in advocating? Because you and I know this is hard for our students to walk up to a professor and clearly, kindly ask for what they need in a non-entitled way. That's a rarity.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you recommend in the advocating front?
I mean, I think I really, I've said this like 4 times, so it's repeating myself over and over. I think these students need mentorship. I mean, listen, if you self-advocating, even as a grown adult, when I'm uncomfortable and I want to confront someone, I will go to a friend and I'll say, hey, I need to have a conversation with a friend, that fierce conversation that's hard. Or I need to have a conversation with an employee. I go to someone and I say, can you help me think through this? Can you help me practice? Can I write it down so that when I go, I'm not shaking and I don't say what I want to say? I just feel like we really need to depend and work with each other and the people in our lives to help support us. I don't think self-advocacy can happen just alone.
Yeah. What do you do for organization? The number one thing I hear from students is like, I'll remember.
No.
And when I hear that, I know you're dead in the water, right? And it's going to get too busy. Is there anything you recommend, any organizational strategies, or how does that look throughout this college process?
Well, I am so lucky that my sister is a organizational leadership coach, and she's done this for like 40 years. And so I've learned a lot of just tools and skills, right? And I think, there's all different ways for students to get organized. And I think we have to look at each student and what their individual needs are and what platforms they use. Are you going to be a list, write down a list? Are you going to use a computer? But the one thing is that you have to capture the task somewhere. With our students, I had a student who just said this yesterday, that same thing. I'm like, so you're going to write that letter to your school counselor, right? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay,
he just sat there, right?
Yeah, he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so what's the next step? And I think that's the number one thing if a student ever, no matter you have a teacher, a parent, or a coach, it's like, I'm going to do this. Okay, what's the next step? Where are you going to capture it? You're either going to capture it on your calendar. If you use your calendar, you're going to capture it on your to-do list. And then you have to have the time of the week where you actually commit to doing the tasks. These are just best practice habits that students can learn. Everyone can learn these habits. This is habit stacking. I love that phrase. And we kind of demand that from our students. There's that old, I can't remember the name of the philosophy, but I don't know if it's a philosophy, but it's the do, delete, delegate. Either do it, delete it, or delegate the task to a list where you know you're going to come back to it.
Yeah, that's the first of all, working with someone throughout the college process, it becomes very clear because they know they have an organizational system that someone has helped set up with them. And it's very clear. That's actually one of my biggest indicators for success is when I talk to a student and I'm like, oh yeah, we need to do this. And they pull out their phone or they pull out something and capture it. I'm like, that kid's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And the one who's like, I'm going to remember it. I'm like, especially the more intelligent you are, the longer you can get away with it, and just eats up working memory over time. And I mean, we see this all the time, and we know those students are going to struggle because they haven't even started building an organization system yet.
Yeah, I think most of my students probably use their phones for that kind of capturing these days. But for me, it's like capturing it where?
Correct.
Is it like on your notes and you have 70,000 of them? Did you send yourself an email that you're going to eventually put into a task management system, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of coaching that needs to be done there. And again, this college process, when done right, it's because there's too many to-dos not to have an organizational system.
Yeah, I can't imagine a student doing this without. I close my eyes and I see all the lists that we have created that have like check mark. I'm just checklists are key.
Yeah. To close it up, I wanted to talk about the balance that caregivers, parents can do between supporting their students throughout the process and taking a step back. You and I lean more towards taking the step back. Mm-hmm. And I know it's hard for a lot of families because you see the procrastination, you see the challenges. How do you think about that balance?
I think it is pretty crucial for parents to get uncomfortable sooner than they really want to. And this is not because I do understand, and I have zero judgment of parents, but I think it is so crucial to get to that place of I am uncomfortable. My student's going to fail. They're not going to wake up. They're not going to finish their homework. I would much rather that happen in the family home so we can really address it or come to terms that the student may not be ready yet for college. But not ready yet doesn't mean they don't go because they're not ready today. It means there's a lot of work to do. And so even then, it's like, how are we going to continue to step back? And stepping back feels like a really big ask. And we have to scaffold stepping back. Like first, okay, does that mean they're going to do their chores or they're going to wake up or they're going to take their medication themselves? We start with that. Then when we tackle that, the next thing is, okay, we're going to let them start calling their doctors and make their own appointments. We're going to maybe start giving them a certain amount of money every week that they're going to manage. And we're not going to give them extra money because they're going to have to know what it feels like to run out the first day that they go to Chipotle and buy their friends all burritos, right? Like, so it just, and I think what parents need to be able to do is to be comfortable enough to do that. And then obviously have their support systems for this beginning of letting go, right? Whether it's going to be a therapist or a mentor or their husband or wife or a best friend, to have someone to talk to, like, this is really, really hard.
Yeah. So funny. All the examples you gave, like, is stuff I see all the time, right? It's like student runs out of money. Parents are like, well, don't do it again. Here's an extra. And it's like, no, like we need to feel some pain here or we're just going to keep this. And it's just going to get bigger the longer we kick it down the road.
Well, and I think the thing that is really important to hear is that they need to feel the pain. But what we're actually talking about is encoding the brain. This is a neurological fact that when students have the repetitive experiences of things not working, they understand that to do something different, they're going to have to do something different. And then that's encoded in the brain. If we don't give them the practice, they're not going to get it. Eventually they're going to get it, but it's going to be when they're at school. And that is not, the stakes are too high. It's too expensive. Yeah. It's too hard on the self-esteem. There's just so many factors that can really impact the whole family systems if we just don't have the courage to let go early.
So well said. I used to be like, every parent should not do anything. And then I had a daughter and, when she was at 3, she was zipping up her jacket. Every bone in my body wants to jump in.
Zip.
Yeah. And I speak about it, right? So I get how hard it is. And I love how you framed it. And I love how you focus on parent self-care, whether that's extra yoga, extra whatever, because these kids are going to need you for a long time. So it's important to take care of ourselves, but we also got to grow adults here.
Yeah.
So That's great. Laura, your work is absolutely phenomenal. Where can people learn more about you?
Well, our website is emergingconsulting.com. You can email me at laurabarr@emerging. consulting.com, and we just love to talk to families all the time about whatever their situation is. And if we're not a fit, we love to refer to the right place.
Yeah, highly recommend it. And there's some great resources there, which we'll link as well. So
great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Executive Function for All podcast. If today's episode brought you any value, please rate us 5 stars and share it with someone who may benefit. And remember, every small step you take builds towards your success. For resources and guidance, visit untappedlearning.com. Keep growing, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.